So, did anyone else know that this existed? So my latest little fixation has been on the 1996 Fire Emblem OVA. I don't know how well known its existence is, because while I would consider myself a decently enthusiastic Fire Emblem fan, I had never heard of it before the other night. I was talking with someone about Evangelion and its English dub. However, I had accidentally pulled up the cast of the original English dub, not the newer Netflix dub that we had been talking about. As I scrolled through the other animes one of the VAs had worked on, one jumped out at me. Fire Emblem? Fire Emblem has an anime? For anyone unfamiliar with it, Fire Emblem is a tactical RPG that Nintendo has put out since the early 1990s. That being said, it wasn't actually localized into the States for well over 10 years and 5 mainline games. That would change in 2001, where Fire Emblem would make its grand entrance into the United States with Smash Melee. Yeah, Marth and Roy, some of the most iconic Fire Emblem characters, they actually debuted in Smash first for American audiences. Though, if you've got even a passing knowledge of the series, you probably knew this already. Melee introduced the stateside to Fire Emblem, then The Binding Blade was released the next year in 2002. Thus, The Binding Blade was the first time that American audiences were officially introduced to Fire Emblem in their own series. Right? Well, dear viewer, this is where stuff got interesting for me. Do you remember the year I said that the Fire Emblem OVA came out? 1996? Well, as a matter of fact, it somehow got an American localization just 2 years later. That means that the Fire Emblem OVA is actually the earliest piece of official Fire Emblem media available in the United States. I know this isn't super groundbreaking, world-shattering stuff, but it's kind of cool to learn something that everyone used to pass around as a fact wasn't technically true. I felt like Indiana Jones unearthing some forgotten artifact of Nintendo history. If I'm wrong and this was public knowledge, I'm sorry, Fire Emblem fanbase. I'm sorry I did you dirtier than the Smash Bros. Roster. The Fire Emblem OVA was created by Studio Fantasia and produced by KSS. I don't believe the former studio made anything of note, though KSS apparently has ties to the Golden Boy OVA and Naruto of all things. What I find curious about this situation is that KSS wasn't some no-name animation studio. They had had some genuinely popular work under their belt, at least by modern standards, so how come I had never heard of this before? Well, it's probably because the OVA was cancelled after just 2 episodes due to poor sales figures. Despite getting canned, as mentioned earlier, it did get released and even brought over to the States. See, that's what's so interesting to me about all this. The OVA episodes are released in 1996, production was cancelled, and then 2 years later they localized it for a Western release? As a reminder, Fire Emblem hadn't been released in Western territories yet. Why would you spend money on an OVA that had already did poorly and localize it for people who'd never heard of its source material? Speaking of the source material, this OVA adapts the first few chapters of the first game in the series. However, it takes the chance to flesh out the world in a way that wasn't possible on the NES. Stuff like having a Pegasus stored in the attic of a castle tower is really creative, and getting a chance to see the troops interacting outside of combat or brief flashes of backstory are just great touches. They aren't properly fleshed out, but it's just nice to have these little bits of flavor. It feels like the studio actually cared about fleshing out the game's story and building upon it, which is great to see. Finally, it's time to actually talk about this anime's plot. The OVA starts with a flashback of Marth and Co. fleeing for their lives. Their kingdom, Altea, has been overrun by the Empire of... Honestly, I have no idea how to pronounce this word. Dolar? I think it's Dolar? Dolar? We're just gonna go with that. When they come to a dead end, Marth's sister, Elise, uses a teleportation spell to save the others, sacrificing herself. Off the bat, I like this. It immediately gives Marth a motivation to retake his kingdom and avenge his sister. It also immediately ties into mechanics that you're able to use in-game, which adaptations should always strive to do whenever possible. That being said, it's not immediately clear on what exactly Elise is doing. She just magics up a circle under Marth and Jagan. Neither of them verbally mentioned that this is a teleportation spell. Sure, this adaptation was likely made for fans of the game, but if someone found the OVA and wasn't familiar with the games, any American audience at the time, they might be a little confused on what exactly she just did. Also, the audio balancing could have used another pass. With the prologue out the way, we're given a lore dump in the opening. Dolar attacks and defeats Altea, taking over the kingdom. It's up to Prince Marth and his merry band of knights to save Altea and the world from evil magic men and a big-ass dragon. It's just classic fantasy schlock, and it's great. I love it. What's also great is the art style. Even though the files I got are only in 360 fucking p, you can still make out some really great landscapes and great character designs. Everyone has a unique and easily recognizable look, which communicates some aspect of their character. Jaken is an experienced warrior, Cain and Abel are the stereotypical twins that fight together, Marth is the altruistic twink prince with a can-do, no-wrong vibe. I just love everyone's designs. After the opening ends, we're introduced to Kaida. Kaida? I don't know, I never played Fire Emblem 1, who goes on to be Marth's love interest. Her family took in Marth's after the events of the prologue, and even in the first scenes with the two of them, there's a fair bit of chemistry already between them. It's sweet. Skipping ahead a bit, Marth's father, Cornelius, is leading a battle to try and gain ground on Altean soil. However, he encounters the previously mentioned big bad magic man, Garneth. They talk a bit, and while Cornelius has a legendary sword at his disposal, Bro tries to run up on a mage. Even though I've played only a few Fire Emblem games, I know you never try this shit. This is maybe my favorite bit from this entire OVA. Seeing Garneth's grimoire be burnt by its magic and have the animators flex their skills, it really was just a sight to behold. Genuinely impressive talent was behind this OVA. This is just one of a number of reasons it's sad that it only had 2 episodes released. With Cornelius dead and Falchion lost, Marth decides to gather allies from the neighboring lands in order to retake Altea. I really like this. It sets an end goal with clearly defined progression towards said goal. Marth has to increase the size of his army, the more new characters he recruits, the closer he is to achieving the goal. It's simple, but it works. Taking a moment to talk about Marth's groupies, they suffer from a severe lack of name drops. I happen to know Cain and Abel from playing Fire Emblem Heroes back in high school, but I genuinely don't know if their names are spoken at all in the entire OVA. Compare how they aren't officially introduced to the viewer to how Ogma is introduced by name later on. It's just inconsistent. Speaking of Ogma, he's introduced when Kata's town is attacked by pirates. Marth and friends rush to fend off the attackers, and I'm kinda surprised at the level of violence they're showing. It's nothing crazy, but, you know, this is a Nintendo property we're talking about. People are actually dying. This feels like a battle that isn't shying away from showing a little violence. Obviously there isn't any crazy gore, but hey, I'll take what I can get. The first episode ends on a high note, with the Alteans having saved the day with a little help from their friends. With their numbers growing, they set sail for adventure and justice and the treasure that would make their dreams come true. Hey, who the hell wrote this? All things considered, not a bad first episode. The opening lore drop is a bit much, dropping the names of kingdoms and key figures and whatnot. It's a decent bit all at once, but I'm sure that would be lessened over the course of the rest of the episodes. Oh shit, right. The second and final episode of the OVA opens with us following a new character, Navarre. He's being chased by a bandit gang. Why exactly we never learn, but he dispatches them with ease. For the second time in the OVA, the action on screen is presumably based on a critical attack. I think his swords are even supposed to be based on the in-game killing edge. I really applaud this sort of thing in adaptations. If fans can enjoy the little details and newcomers don't miss anything important from said details, you're doing a great job of adapting something, in my book at least. Navarre is approached by the leader of the bandits, seeking a partnership with the assassin. In a twist that actually surprised me, Navarre joins the bandit guy, if only to keep an eye on the nun that they captured. He might not immediately show it, but he seems to be a bit of a softie. We're also introduced to Julian, a good-hearted thief who's friends with the aforementioned captured nun, Lena. Navarre notices him sneaking bread to her, but he doesn't snitch. Even if it's nothing much, I like the amount of characterization given to him. Each episode would have probably focused on another character joining the army and fleshing them out, which would have been nice to see. Speaking of stuff that's nice to see, we get to see the main cast doing jack shit. Unironically, I love seeing this. They're practicing, they're having a drink, they're just hanging out. They can't always be on the move or fighting. It just makes these characters feel a tiny bit more real, like they actually exist and do stuff when we don't see them. Cutting back to Navarre, he's participating in a little mercenary fight club. The main attraction, though, is the sale of Lena to some Mr. Popo-looking guy. Julian, understandably, isn't excited about this, so he somehow escapes with Lena? I'm not leaving any scenes out, it just hard cuts to them having escaped. This is never explained. I want to chalk this up to the lack of budget, or maybe some in-between scene didn't get finished in time, but in any case, the bandits catch up to them. Navarre steps in to spare Julian from a 4v1, which goes well. Navarre reveals his intentions by killing the bandits. It seems like he just wanted to make sure Lena was safe. He leaves them be, the scene ends, and then Julian is limping like he got the shit kicked out of him? Marth and the others have to nurse him back to health, which is when he tells them that Lena somehow got captured again? Like before, this is never explained. It's incredibly jarring and super immersion breaking. Marth and friends come in clutch to wipe out the bandits while Navarre frees Lena. He lets his edge slip out and talks about how he has the hands of a murderer, and that they're stained with blood. According to Navarre, not even God can save him. Real stand-up guy. He then goes on to fight Ogma for some reason. Like, didn't you just betray these guys? Why are you fighting for them? According to some website I found, it was to test himself. Like he's fucking Goku or something. Kaida ultimately breaks up the fight and convinces Navarre to join them by, I kid you not, saying that she thinks her fighting is meaningful. Not that she knows, she thinks it might be. And he just changes his mind and joins. Just like that. Real great character writing, Fantasia. Great job. I glossed over most of the Marth-centric stuff in this episode as it was way less important and less interesting than building up to Navarre, Lena, and Julian. They end the episode in the same fashion as episode 1, on their way to another kingdom to make more allies. As I mentioned before, this sets up the idea that each episode would see Marth gaining more and more allies before ultimately taking the fight to Garneth and the off-screen, ultra-mega evil dragon dude. But that's it. There isn't another episode, so... That felt kinda abrupt, didn't it? I'm sorry, but hey, what can you expect from an anime that only got 2 episodes? For what it was, I think it's a solid watch if you're a fan of Fire Emblem. Even if you aren't, it's only like, what, 50 minutes-ish? It's just some good old-fashioned fantasy fun. It's not going to redefine your view on the genre like how something like Berserk might, but what's wrong with watching a 6 out of 10 show? In my eyes, you can't watch 10 out of 10s all the time. If you did want to watch it, you can either download the sub and dub off the Internet Archive, or just find both episodes on YouTube. If it was up to me to decide if it should have gotten finished, I would say this anime deserves it. Fire Emblem is such a unique series to adapt because of one aspect of its gameplay: permadeath. Although it's less prevalent in modern releases, one of the most interesting mechanics for the older games was that your characters could actually be killed. Like, I'm talking gone for the rest of the game dead. I don't know if they actually would have gone this far, but imagine if the OVA went for it and actually killed some of the main cast. That could add genuine stakes to every encounter, give each battle some actual tension. Speaking from experience, there's nothing like the dread you feel when you see your enemy get a crit out of nowhere. They were doing a pretty decent job of adapting the mechanics already, so I can't say for certain that they wouldn't have omitted the idea. All in all, I think it definitely had potential to be one of the better video game adaptations and maybe pave the road for more of its kind, especially for Nintendo properties. Imagine a proper Ocarina of Time adaptation, or Star Fox, or Metroid, or even hell, Animal Crossing, which I learned after writing the script. Apparently Animal Crossing does just have an anime movie. Did anyone else know that this existed? In any case, 90s Nintendo was fucking built different. Maybe they actually would have done it. If F-Zero could fucking get an anime, maybe the rest of their catalog could have. Maybe it should have. But I don't fucking know, I'm not Shigeru Miyamoto. In any case, I digress. This was a fun little rabbit hole to go down. I don't really expect this video to do super well, considering it's a departure from the normal vibe of my content, but I am open to doing some more deep dives into semi-obscure anime that I dig up that I think are neat. If you liked the video, please consider leaving a like or comment, maybe even subscribing to the channel. It'd really mean a lot. As always, thank you for watching, and have a great rest of your day.